All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring a deeply fascinating physical practice designed to help you process emotional exhaustion. We so often talk about emotional weight as this abstract idea, right? Like just this vague feeling of heaviness we can't seem to shake. But what if you could actually feel it? What if you could hold it in your hands and, most importantly, intentionally put it down? Well, that is exactly what we're unpacking today. So I want you to start by asking yourself this directly. What emotional burden are you carrying silently? Think about it for a second. Because today, we're taking that invisible struggle and making it powerfully, physically tangible. Sometimes, you just can't think your way out of emotional weight. We can intellectualize our pain all day long, but we really need a way to make those inner burdens visible so we can actually deal with the whole shebang. Since we all carry some unseen baggage, let's head right into section 1. The weight we carry, making the invisible visible. To do this, we're going to look at the stone carry exercise. Basically, this is a practice where you carry a literal physical stone to represent an emotional burden. It transforms a simple everyday rock into a massive symbol. It becomes this physical manifestation of not just your pain, but the sheer exhausting effort of what you've been silently hauling around. By carrying this stone consciously, you literally start feeling the heaviness you carry emotionally every single day. It takes your inner stress, your constant energy drain, and eventually the release of release, and makes them entirely physically visible. And you know what's really interesting here? When you externalize these common burdens, it almost instantly helps you recognize your own hidden struggles. This is especially powerful if you're carrying around guilt, grief, pressure, expectations, resentment, burnout, or, and this is a big one, the emotional responsibility for others. It is just so easy to let these things build up inside without ever acknowledging the immense exhaustion they cause. You might just think, oh, I'm just tired, completely unaware that your mind is essentially lifting heavy emotional weights all day long. To move from the abstract into the physical, we need to prep with some true intentionality. So let's look at section 2, choosing your stone, preparing for the practice. The absolute crucial point here is grounding yourself. You have to literally feel the weight in your hand before you can even begin to process it in your mind. So you'll want to choose a stone that feels highly noticeable in your hand, but, is still safe to carry. Then just hold it quietly for a few moments. Really feel its texture, its temperature, its absolute density. Take a slow, intentional breath. You're setting the stage here to pull that internal stress right out into the open. As you're holding that stone, ask yourself, what emotional burden does this represent for me? Honestly, you might realize it represents this crushing pressure to succeed, or maybe a profound fear of failure. Maybe it's unresolved grief, chronic people-pleasing, self-doubt, loneliness, or just a deeply unspoken pain. You are actively linking that physical object in your hand directly to the specific internal struggle in your heart. Okay, once you have your stone and your intentions set, let's step into the rising action of this journey. Section 3, the walking reflection, 10 to 15 minutes of silence. This part brilliantly illustrates the core metaphor of the entire practice. As you start walking slowly with the stone in your hand, you'll immediately notice the physical experience, the actual weight, the tension slowly creeping up your arm and into your shoulders. But at the same exact time, you're tracking the emotional experience. You'll notice thoughts bubbling up, emotional reactions, and moments of intense psychological resistance. That physical ache building in your arm, it directly mirrors the exhausting emotional resistance building up in your mind. So, as you walk in silence, I want you to let your mind grapple with a rapid series of reflections. Start with this. How long have I been carrying this emotionally? Well, it's often a total shock when we finally stop and realize just how many years, or literally decades, we've been holding on to a specific weight. Then, let your thoughts move to the next reflection on the walk. What has this burden actually cost me? Because we rarely calculate the hidden toll of our baggage, do we? We don't measure the lost joy, the missed opportunities, or the sheer unbelievable energy drain. Think about waking up already exhausted or snapping at your loved ones just because your emotional reserves are entirely depleted by this invisible weight. Recognizing that cost is step 1 toward actually wanting to be free of it. Here's another incredibly powerful question to ask yourself on this walk. Who taught me I must carry this alone? We really need to figure out if this burden still serves us, and crucially, if we're holding on to a responsibility that was never fully ours to begin with. Sometimes we realize right then and there that we've been clutching this stone that someone else handed to us a very, very long time ago. Now, during this walk, you've got to observe your mind carefully. You might actually hear your inner critic fighting back. It might say things like, keep carrying it, or don't let it go, or even, you need this to stay in control. Or it might whisper its absolute best defense. This burden defines you. It perfectly externalizes the mind's profound, stubborn resistance to just letting go. And wow, does that bring us to a major psychological trap. We become so incredibly accustomed to emotional weight that we mistake heaviness for identity. It's a surprising, almost ironic quirk of human psychology. People become fiercely attached to their own suffering because it literally becomes part of who they think they are. They've genuinely forgotten who they are without that familiar, grounding weight of the stone. After walking, reflecting, and wrestling with that inner voice, you hit the climax of the practice. Section 4, the moment of release. Choosing to put it down. This is where you make the active, physical choice to release the stone, creating a really profound moment of catharsis. At the end of the walk, you just pause. You hold the stone one final time, feeling every ounce of its accumulated weight. And then you make a choice. You place it down gently. You return it to nature or set it somewhere meaningful. You don't just toss it away haphazardly. You consciously, deliberately release it. As you let it go, try saying this silently to yourself. I acknowledge what I have carried, but I no longer need to carry it alone. Saying this allows you to actually honor the pain you endured without letting it dictate your future. You're acknowledging the reality of the weight, absolutely, but you are fundamentally changing your relationship to it. Taking just a bit of time to journal immediately afterward really helps solidify this relief. Ask yourself, what burden did the stone represent? What emotions surfaced during the walk? Did I resist letting it go? What am I afraid would happen without it? And finally, what would emotional lightness actually feel like? Documenting this helps bridge that physical exercise right back to your daily psychological state, truly anchoring the transformation. Now, let's explore the ultimate psychological insight of this explainer. Section 5, the final realization, redefining strength. This is just so important to grasp. The goal is not pretending the pain never existed. Putting the stone down doesn't magically erase your past. Not at all. It simply removes the active burden from your present, so you can actually move forward with a little more ease. The real goal here is realizing that carrying something for a long time does not mean you were meant to carry it forever. This single realization is the absolute key to healing. It gives you the permission you've been waiting for to finally step out from underneath those expectations and that grief you've been lugging around for years. Because healing often begins with one quiet realization. We are culturally conditioned to believe that taking on more weight makes us resilient. We think sheer endurance is the only metric of toughness. But honestly, that's only half the truth. Strength is not only about carrying more. Here is the rest of that truth. True strength, the kind that brings lasting, genuine peace, requires immense courage. Strength is learning what you are finally ready to put down. It takes profound bravery to let go of an identity built around suffering and to finally step into emotional lightness. As we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with this one vital question. What are you finally ready to put down today? Seriously, go find your stone, take that silent walk, and discover what emotional lightness truly feels like for yourself. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey, and I will catch you in the next explainer.